So good morning and welcome to Palace Penguins United Big Book Study. This week I'm pleased to reintroduce Mags, who's come along to continue with the Big Book Study. Over to you, Mags.
Thank you so much, Lois, and to everybody doing service. My name is Mags and I'm an alcoholic. Lovely to be here this morning. I don't know why, but before I logged on I was a little bit nervous. Don't know why all of a sudden that's happened, but anyway, here we are. Great to be here, and yeah, Lois, probably do a little bit of a recap, but we'll see how that goes as well. It's funny. This is a random one, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway. Last Sunday morning at about 5:45, I was out walking the dog. And this little voice that I get sometimes said to me, page 17. And I was like, what? And then it said page 17. And I was like, oh my God. And it dawned on me whilst I'm walking with the dog that I didn't expressly mention in last week's session, page 17. I mentioned page 47. I mentioned the bottom of page 62, but I didn't make it expressly clear that page 17, we talked about the solution, and we talked about the fact that, we have to understand that we have this allergy and that there is a solution, but I didn't make it crystal clear. On page 17, it talks about the two commons, the common peril and the common solution, and that is the cement that binds us. We did last week talk about the cement and making mortar without sand and all of that, but again, I didn't specifically mention page 17. So as the week has gone on, I'm thinking I must remember, so thank you, Lois, to remind me to do a little bit of a recap on that, because you know what I'm like. I don't like it or I don't want the AA police to come find me and say, oh, you didn't mention page 17. Because that's how the AA police talk when they call me. Or at least that's how it feels in my head when someone calls me. So, yeah, just to confirm that page 17 is the cement that binds us when we talk about those masonry terms. And then we go into the cornerstone on 47 and the keystone on 62. So just wanted to clarify that. You see, it's an amazing thing that little voice sometimes gets into my head at the weirdest times, but is directed me to something that I need to reflect on. So it was most helpful. And this week, we're moving into step 6 and 7. These two paragraphs that we're going to cover pack a big punch, really. And up to this point, we know that we've gone through all of the first 5 steps. We have looked at the first 5 proposals, as they call them, in the bottom of page 75. We've reflected on all of that, and last week I kind of ended the session with saying reflect on all of that and where you're at within the first 5 proposals. Have you omitted anything, or have you carefully followed the clear-cut directions from the very beginning of the book right to where we were at on page 75? And if you had omitted anything, then the importance of talking to your sponsor about all of that. So I hope it was worthwhile to go through all of that. So the other thing, just to mention, I had a call from somebody during the week and they were like, oh my God, my sponsor didn't do that 1 hour with me. Didn't tell me to go home and do the 1 hour. Oh my God, it's devastating. My program is a mess. And I'm like, cool your jets. You might have done 45 minutes. You might have done 30 minutes. I don't know, but don't be in despair. About anything like that. Your sponsor's there to guide you in the way that they've been given it. I'm given this the way that it has been given to me by the clear-cut directions, which is the way that I do it is line by line, word for word with sponsees. I can't make any comment or judgment on how other people's sponsors do it. That's not what this book study is about. You know, I'm deeply respectful for people to take the time, the effort and the energy to bring somebody through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. That said, though, if we're not following the clear-cut directions that are set out in masterly detail, then we're not necessarily doing AA. So it's to be mindful of that. But, yeah. Anyway, there's the reflections, Laws. That's all I'm doing this week. I'm not going to go through the first 5 proposals because I think we were all exhausted after last Saturday's session with that one paragraph. And, you know, the anticipation of moving into step 6 and 7. And in the short form on page 59, they simply say, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And step 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. So very short, in the short form on that page. And on page 76, 2 very simple paragraphs. And you won't ever forget where step 6 and 7 are. You know, here we are. I always remember page 76 because it's just 6 and 7 the other way round. So, you know, if you're wondering, where do I find step 6 and 7? Just go to 76 and you'll find them right there at the top of the page. Now, the thing for me is, when I was in the rooms, I would always hear people talk about the fact that when they got to step 6 and 7, there wasn't enough in the big book because there was only 2 paragraphs. And therefore they had to do a lot of additional reading and academia and research to expand on the 2 paragraphs that were in the big book because they weren't necessarily satisfied with the directions that were set out in these 2 paragraphs. And to make it even more obvious as to how short these 2 paragraphs are, in step 6, we've only got 5 sentences. In step 7, we've only got 4 sentences. And in those 2 paragraphs, you've actually got only just 14 lines in the big book. But people felt that they needed to add more and more and more. When in actual fact, everything you need to know about step 6 and 7 is included into very succinct, short paragraphs that definitely pack a punch. So I didn't need to read. Not that I didn't need to read because when my sponsor brought me through these steps, I couldn't have been clearer about what this was about. And you know, I always say this, or maybe I say this at my home group that a couple of yous come to as well, but the first paragraph of the foreword to the first edition talks about the fact that if you follow the clear-cut directions that are set out in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, you need go no further for any further authentication. Everything that we need to know about the progression of our illness and how we overcome it is in the 164 pages. Now, feel free to add to it by using the other literature that is available. Don't get me wrong, but know that that other literature that is available is not the program of recovery and it's not the program of action. What you need for your recovery and the action that you need to take is set out within the 164 pages. So I didn't necessarily need to read all of that additional literature. I heard in the rooms, everybody loves that. Drop the rock, drop the rock. I thought, oh my God, I got to get myself a copy of this. Drop the rock. And I did. But everything I needed to know was in these 2 paragraphs. And there are other books. But what we're going to go through just now is, I hope, the depth and weight that the first 100 gave us. And last week we brought it to this summary, and we've covered all of the work that we've done up to this point. And when we go into 6 and 7 and we do that 7th step prayer, something changes again, I feel anyway. We're on a different trajectory because something else is kicking in. You know, we've been in this prayerful exercise from the moment we said our 3rd step prayer. And you know that there is no amen at the end of the 3rd step prayer. We're continuing that prayerful exercise all the way through. We enter into it from 3 right the way through to step 7, where at the end of the prayer it says amen. And then we go into a different trajectory, if I could call it that. So, page 76. If we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. So the first word is so important. You know that I pointed this out a few times when it's in the pages. If we can answer. If is a very conditional word. If we can, or if we can't. You know, so if you've followed the directions up to this point, if you've done that 1 hour afterwards, that you've carefully reviewed everything up to this point, that you haven't omitted anything, if you can answer to our satisfaction, i.e., if you can answer to the satisfaction as to how it's set out in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you've followed the clear-cut directions up to this point, then you're ready to look at step 6. It's not to the satisfaction of what you think, or it's not to the satisfaction of necessarily what your sponsor's doing. It's, and I might be getting the words wrong with regards to this, but please bear with me on it. To our satisfaction, have you followed everything up to this point in the way that it has been set out? Because if you can answer to that satisfaction, you're ready to look at step 6. And they remind us here, we have emphasized, so the first 100 that wrote the book, the entire way through up to this point and beyond, especially when we're moving into 8 and 9, we have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Willingness, 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 willingness. Willingness means not being opposed to something in your mind. Page 567 into 568, the spiritual experience, appendix 2, at the back of the book, is where it makes it very clear about the fact that willingness, honesty, open-mindedness are the essential requirements for the program and for the rest of our life, and that not only are they essential, they're completely and utterly indispensable. You know, my vital organs that keep me alive, these things are vital, they're essential. I can't do without them, and it's the same that applies to the willingness, the honesty, and the open-mindedness. So they're reminding us of that. Are we now ready? And this is the question that you need to be asking yourself at this point. Are we now ready? Not tomorrow, not in the next couple of months, not next year. Are we now ready? And ready meaning for immediate use. Because at this point, we begin to move at a different pace as well with regards to this. This is where we really get into the action. Okay. So are we now And that word comes up again and again as we go through these tiny little paragraphs. Are we now ready for immediate use to let God remove all of the things which we have admitted are objectionable? I'm going to read it again because the need to emphasize the God thing here, okay? Because we're in the process of turning our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him. Remember that step 3 in the short form. This process that you're in up to the end of 7 is where you're turning your will and your life over. So are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? You've identified those things as you've gone through your 4th step. You've identified the selfishness, the dishonesty, the resentment, the fear. You've identified all of your fears. You've identified, your conduct with matters related to sex, jealousy, bitterness, selfishness. Were you selfish or not? All of those things that you've identified and then admitted to God, to yourself and another human being, the exact nature of those wrongs, the things that were objectionable in you, you've admitted all of that in your step 5, right? You've put it out there. But are you now ready to let God remove? Not just try to, but to remove in totality the things that you have admitted in you that are objectionable. Now, it may well be that, because underneath all of the selfishness, the dishonesty, the fear, remember what it says on page 62, driven by 100 forms of fear, driven by 100 forms of selfishness, dishonesty, etc., etc. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things that you will have identified through this process that are objectionable. It's all of that. Are you ready for God to remove all of that? Because that is what's going to happen. Really and truly, it's not an if, it's not a but, it's not a maybe. This is what is going to happen. They're going to be removed if you are willing to let them be. Because here's the thing. Can he now take them all? Everyone? Like the clear-cut directions couldn't be any more masterly in how they have set out. Can he now take them all? Everyone? Because let me tell you, my experience was at this point, when I first went through the steps, there was a part of me that was still doubtful about what God could do for me. There was still a part of me, naively, that thought that it would be more beneficial for me to hold on to a couple of things. Because there was a little bit of my, not a little bit, but a significant amount of my agnostic temperament came into play where I thought, well, I'm not going to really, there's no way they could help me with that. Even though by this stage, the drink thing had been totally and utterly removed. I can't emphasize enough that when can he now take all of them? And it's not, can God take them all? Because God has all power. May you find him now. God has all power. Can he now take all of them, every one? I.e., are you going to let him? Are you now ready to let God? Can he take all of them from you? It's not about God's power and his ability to take them. It's whether you are now ready to let him. That's a really significant point. This is not questioning the power of God. Can he take them? I don't know about that. Maybe I'll hold on to a couple of things because Maybe he hasn't got the power. Knock that one out of your head. Set aside every single thing you think you know. Are you prepared to let God take all of them? Every single last one of them. Every single last remnant of the things that you have established are objectionable in you. Like, remember, you've gone through this process and you found it tough and you found it emotional. If anybody's found it a breeze, please call me and let me know how you found it to be a breeze. Because in this prayerful exercise, what didn't make it a breeze for me is because I was fighting against it. My ego was trying to hold on to everything. And yes, I was in this prayerful exercise, but it was like this tug of war with my ego. That's not me. That is you. That isn't me. I don't want to go towards this God of my own understanding. All of this chaos that was being created in my mind, not by the power of God, but my tug of war with not having the humility of myself to be able to let this stuff go, clinging on to the thing that, no, my job's really important to me. I've worked so hard. I can't get rid of the stuff that makes me the way that I am at work because that's what serves me so well. And, yes, all of this lovely stuff that I do for my family, turns out it's all people pleasing to get what I want from it. Having to look at all of that stuff was really, really challenging for me. I was in this battle with my ego and what I thought I was and the person that I thought that I needed to be. That's what caused the lack of ease going through this process. But here's the thing. It gives us this little opportunity in this next sentence that if, there's that word again, if we still, even though we've gone through this process up to this point, if we still cling to something, we will not let go. We ask God. There's the prayer. We're asking God to help us be willing. So even if you're not willing of yourself, they give us the opportunity with another spiritual tool, another prayer to ask for the power. May you find him now. As it says at the top of page 59, ask God to give you the willingness. So no matter what way you go with this, there's an opportunity for you to move forward. So there was something in my life at this point that I thought, nah, that's not what my problem is anymore. The drink thing has been removed. I'll be fine and dandy. I'm really willing for God to take everything. I thought everything, but these couple of bits I'll just hold on to. One was in relation to a relationship, and the other thing was in relation to something physical. I'll sort this problem out myself. I'll cling on to this relationship and I'll sort it out. And I'll make sure I sort the other person out too, because there's no way God's going to get involved in that. So see everything else, God, you take it. I'm really, really willing for you to do it. But I'll just hang on to these couple of things. And for a period of time, I didn't even pray for the willingness for those two things to be removed, because my self-reliance would fix this. My willpower will fix this. My self-determination will fix this. Well, you can imagine how that went for both of those things. They got progressively worse. Yeah. To the extent where I had no other option, right the way back to step one. I didn't drink, absolutely not, but my powerlessness and the unmanageable manageability of my life and my thinking with regards to those two matters brought me back to step 1, page 25, where I could go on to the bitter end, that very last paragraph. I could go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of the intolerable situation that I found myself in with this relationship and my physical condition. Or I could accept the spiritual help. So what did I do at that point? I got the willingness and I accepted the spiritual help. To point through that example of the bitter experience that I have had with this 6 and 7, I suppose, is to appeal to you, or to, like, they beg of you on page 49 to lay aside the first 100. They beg of you to lay aside your prejudice even against organised religions. And then on page 58, they beg of us to be fearless and serve from the very outset. I suppose I'm not here to beg anybody, and I suppose I'm just appealing to you that, when you get to this point, do what is suggested. That step 6 paragraph couldn't be clearer. If there is anything, because it doesn't matter how big or small it is, if you're clinging on to something and you think you can sort it, you're turning your will and your life over to the care of God as you understood him. Pray for the willingness, because God will give you that willingness to rectify every single thing that you're faced with in your life, and that genuinely has changed everything in my life. Not only that relationship that I was trying to cling on to and fix in some way, shape or form, even though I knew it wasn't good for me, even though it wasn't within my sex ideal, even though it wasn't serving me well or that person well, I still thought that it was okay. Like, that's nothing other than insanity. Complete and utter insanity in my thinking that this I could sort and that things would be okay. It was quite the opposite. And thank God, through this process, I had no other option than to accept the spiritual help. And that the drink thing didn't return, because I'd gone through the rest of the steps out the other side, sponsoring people, and then I'm given a whole other set of tools in my spiritual toolkit to deal with those two things that I was clinging on to, and then they were removed. And I have so much freedom from those things. It's incredible that they don't, like the alcohol and the drugs, don't affect me. These two things and any relationships with anybody on this planet doesn't affect me. That's the power of what 6 and 7 and the rest of the program is all about. And even today, if there's something and you're years into the program and you're years into the action and you're years into the recovery, just ask yourself, because sometimes I have to do this too. What are you clinging on to now? What are you clinging on to? What's this thing you're really clinging on to that's objectionable in you, that is causing you angstiness, that's causing you not to have a sense of ease and comfort as you flow through the day? What is that thing that's objectionable in you that keeps rising to the surface? Are you willing to let God remove it? That thing that's objectionable? It's not worth it. It's so not worth holding on to, because it's not serving you well. And it doesn't enable you to do God's work well when you're trying to ascertain how you're going to navigate this thing. You know that line in The Actor Running the Show, wrestling satisfaction. If only you could manage this world well. When I'm wrestling with something, I can pretty much identify the fact that I'm clinging on to something that's objectionable. I want what I want from you. I want you to behave in a different way. I want you to behave in the way that I need you to behave. You know, my life is pretty awkward sometimes because like I'm surrounded by loads of people that insist. You've heard me say this, Sandra. I'm surrounded in this world by a load of people who stubbornly insist on having their own personalities. Like, that is a thing for me that is a barrier. But thank God this program gives me something else to be able to overcome what my disturbances are and overcome those things in me that are objectionable, because this is no longer about you. My life is no longer about what you've done. When we get to this point, my life is no longer about being the victim. My life is no longer about demanding of you. It's not about that anymore. So a beautiful paragraph to sit and reflect upon in step 6, to reflect again. Am I willing? What am I clinging on to? What needs to go? Am I ready now? Like literally now, for immediate use, for God to take all of this? That tug of war might happen with your thinking. Will I, won't I? Yes, no, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Because here's the thing, we then move into that step 7 prayer. The back and forth, the back and forth, the back and forth. Am I going to do this? Am I not? Am I going to? Am I not? Am I not? Am I not? Am I? Yes, I think so. Maybe not. Okay. When ready for immediate use, we say something like this. And this is where we move into our 7th step prayer, when ready. My sponsor did this with me in the most phenomenal, beautiful, amazing way. We literally covered the paragraph that we've just covered. We went through this prayer together so he could explain to me what it was all about. And then he said, let me know when you've completed your 7th step prayer. We didn't do this prayer together. This is between me and God. Because I needed to sit with this. And I did sit with it. Not very long, because the pain that I caused myself was excruciating. And I know that might sound like an exaggeration, but you know what I'm talking about. When you're clinging on to something and you're just, that it's not serving you well, but you're going to continue to sit with it anyway. That's what happened with me before I was ready to do this prayer, to say this prayer, to take this prayer, to mean every single word I was saying to the power that is greater than me with what needed to happen. So we say something like this: my creator, spirit of the universe, my maker, Christ, Mother Nature, realm of the spirit, whatever the God of your understanding is called, remember, it's the God of your understanding. Doesn't matter what you call it. I am now, right here, right now, when I say this prayer, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. How powerful is that line? How powerful is that when you sit and you think about that you're willing that this power should have every single last bit of you, both the good and the bad and everything in between. All of you. I pray they're making a really distinct, clarification that that's what we're doing here. I pray, I'm asking you that you now take all of it, good and bad, that you now remove from me every single defect of character. Look at those words. Hear those words. Every single defect of character. Not just the bits that I think. Every single defect of character. But here's the thing. Note this one too. Which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and to my fellows. There's things that I thought were defects, but in actual fact, they weren't. They were useful to God and my fellows. But because of my pride, what I thought you thought of me, because of my self-esteem, what I thought of myself, because of the personal relationships, the sex relations, and all of those things that I was affected by, as identified in my third column. There was things that I thought were defects that I thought should have been removed, but in actual fact, God didn't and hasn't, because they were purposeful and they're useful through what I do in life, whether that be with my colleagues at work, whether that be with my family, or whether that be with sponsees. There's things that that I thought were defects that have actually become qualities that are useful in the way that I live my life now, and it helps me be more useful for God. Because remember, when I made that third step prayer, it was like, my little plans and designs no longer matter. I have a new employer. I'm here, like it says in the fear imagery, I'm here to play the role that he assigned me. So whatever God is going to take, good and bad, it's up to the power. And what we're asking God for is to grant me strength. Isn't that beautiful? Give me the strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Grant me the strength as I go out from here now, ready for immediate use, to do your bidding, to do your work well. Because once we say this third step prayer, we then say the Amen. Grant me the strength to go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. We have now completed step 7. Completed, done, dusted, over, move on. Into step 8, where we go out into action to do his bidding as we move towards making those lists of the people that we had harmed and going out and taking the action and making those amends. This is a partnership. This is a relationship where your defects of character are removed. Every single last one of them, good, bad, indifferent. It will not possibly be what you expect it to be. My sponsor, and this is, I love this part. My sponsor, and if there's anybody here that might have experienced this, my sponsor did not give me a list of defects. Because what would my sponsor know about my defects when they didn't even know their own defects? My sponsor didn't give me a list of assets because he didn't know what my assets are. He didn't know what his own assets were. This is a powerful thing with the power that is greater than us. Now, you might need a little bit of help and assistance in understanding what some of the defects are, but know that this is not a tick box exercise. This is not about going through and picking out a selection of the things that you think apply to you. That's not what it's asking us to do here. It's asking us to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him in that process from step 3 up to the Amen in step 7. You've done all of the work. You've uncovered, you've discovered, you've seen all of these realizations. You've seen the things that are objectionable. You will have seen some of the good qualities, and you've talked about that with your sponsor as you've been going through this process. But this is not a tick box exercise. This is a commitment to the power that you're turning your life over to. I say, and truly believe me at this moment in time, like, my life is not my own. My life belongs to God. I truly take this commitment and this step and this process really, really into my heart, that no matter what's going on in my life right now and whatever's going to happen in the future, that's the will of God. That is his will. And as we go through the process, we learn more and more and more about how we tap into that will of God. What I've learned through this process, this amazing, beautiful process, is that my will is God's will, because I can be so connected to that power that we're never separated. That we're never separated unless I let the worldly clamours get in the way and think that I can run this show myself. I spoke to somebody during the week and they said to my sponsor, give me these lists of defects. So I just, asked God to remove all of that list of defects. And I'm like, oh my God, what about all of the other ones? Because your sponsor might not have seen those or might not know about them. We're asking for all of it, good, bad, indifferent. There's no choice in this matter. If we're given a list, we'll go, no, that one doesn't apply to me, but that's definitely Lorraine. She has that defect. Lorraine definitely has that. That's not mine. Laws, that's definitely his defect, but that's not mine. We're really good at pointing out everybody else's defects, but they never apply to us. Remember, this is not about human power. This is about the power. And what God gives me and has left me with and gives me the direction with. And the reality of it is the defects are removed. I am a perfect child of God. God doesn't see me as defective. God sees me as his perfect child. When I made that decision, when I took that sincere position, he's the director. We covered this last week. He is the director. He's given me the lead. He is the principal. I'm his agent. I'm here to do his work well. He is the father. I'm the child. He's given me the direction. That's what this is all about. My life is not my own. It belongs to a power that is so much greater than me, who knows exactly what I need. He knows exactly who I need to bring me through the path to be purposeful for him. That's what this program is all about. So if you need to do any extra reading on those 2 paragraphs, on those 9 sentences, on those 14 lines, then feel free. But the reality of it is, at the heart of this is your willingness to let go. At the heart of this is your willingness for God to have every single last part of you. At the heart of this now is your desire, your commitment, your open mind to set aside every single thing you think to continue to have a new experience with God, as you go out to do his bidding, to do his work, to rectify those relationships, to continue to move into those daily steps for the rest of your life. Because once you say that, amen, the trajectory changes and there's something else directing your life. You are no longer running this show. The guidance, the power, the direction comes from another entity which you have gained access to through this beautiful prayerful exercise. And in your heart of hearts, you know that to be true. Because you couldn't have got this far without it, for sure. I'm going to leave it at that, Loz. I hope it's made some sense. And look,